On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, is today the last day of the Lightning's season? We break it all down, as well as the reality of the situation for the Lightning awaiting them in the offseason and the reality of this roster right now. All that coming up and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Locked On Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So we're talking about, on today's episode, possibly the last game that the Lightning will play all season. And I say that because of, and this will be a topic throughout the entirety of this episode, but I think a lot of Lightning fans are in agreement that this team has not played well throughout the course of this series. I mean, I think that it doesn't take a seasoned hockey fan to realize that. I've seen both sides of it in the comment section of our YouTube videos over the course of this whole series. I've seen one side of the fan base saying, well, it's, the Panthers, they're a very good team. And on the other side of that, it's the Lightning are just not equipped to win a playoff series. And I've seen some hit back on both sides of that. I've seen people saying, Panthers aren't that good, and vice versa, whatever. And I'll come out and say real quick, why can't it be both? I mean, the Lightning can not be a good team and the Panthers be very good. This is a Panthers team, and there shouldn't be any issue with that for Lightning fans. It's one of those things, because I've also seen over the social media a lot of Lightning fans, saying blow up this roster, get rid of that person, get rid of this person. And, we'll talk more about that in the second segment and the third one as well, because really, like I said, this is going to be a constant topic of conversation. But this, in my opinion, I firmly believe this series is probably the best thing that could have happened to the Lightning. We've talked about all season long the deficiencies that this team has had and the issues that they need to address over the last couple of years as well, and they just haven't able to do that. And I think that it's finally come to a point to where Julien Brisebois can no longer ignore it or put a Band-Aid over it. So we'll take a look at that, obviously, in the following segments. But looking at tonight's or this afternoon's game, the Lightning obviously up against it, down 3-0. Now, could they very well mount off a couple of wins? Obviously, I mean, it's been done before. Could they come back? Yes. But the reality of the situation is, I don't have expectations for a win in today's game. What I would like to see, though, out of this team is some fight, because we haven't really seen that. We've seen through every game in this series, we've really seen the Lightning score a goal or whatever, or mount some momentum, and the Florida Panthers be able to answer back right away, and we just haven't seen the Lightning really be able to bounce back or handle that or really to do anything. It's kind of been a series of Florida basically having their way with them. And I would like to see some sort of pushback on that. I would like to see Nikita Kucherov, if it's even possible at this point, be able to have a good game. I would like to see someone other than Steven Stamkos. I mean, I would still like to see Stamkos score, obviously. And that's another topic. This could possibly be his last game as a Tampa Bay Lightning player. A lot of people don't realize that. But I think that really at the end of the day, this is a game that you just want to see a positive performance from the opening puck drop to the final buzzer, whatever that may look like for the Lightning. I think a lot of people will have differing opinions about that. But I think that really, I just want to see somewhat of a slither of just what this team was a couple of months ago. I'm like I said, I'm not expecting a win. If they win, that's great. You extend the series more. The only problem with that is then, now you got to go back to sunrise. And I think, though, what we could take away from this series as, like I said, I think a lot of Lightning fans at this point in time are in agreement that this is really the end of the line for the Tampa Bay Lightning season. The one takeaway we could have from this that we could carry with us into the offseason, I think, is that Andrei Vasilevskiy is back. There was a lot of question marks around him this season. Really over the last couple of years. Last year didn't really have a stellar season. Going into the playoffs, he started off slow, started to really pick it up as the series went on against Toronto. Obviously, he had that injury in the offseason, led to first 2 months of the season being not being played. And really all season, he's just kind of been in goalie purgatory up until the month of March, mid-March, where we started to see snippets of what the old Vasilevskiy used to be. And then this past week, we've started to kind of see what he used to be. And that's a big positive that I think a lot of Lightning fans should take into account and at least carry with him into the offseason, that at least, we have that. Because, and I'm not saying that this team is completely in need of a rebuild. I don't think that's the right way to put it, but there's definitely a lot of questions that need to be answered this offseason. And like I said, we'll talk about that in the upcoming segment. But I think that really just today is just one of those things to where if you're a Lightning fan, just enjoy it for what it is. I know that's better said than really actually trying to go out there and do it. But as long as it doesn't get ugly early on, which, I mean, now with this team, there's a very good possibility that can, especially early on. And I would just prefer, if we all know at this point in time the Panthers are a better team, but at the same time, if we could just see a good performance, like I said, a full 60-minute game, and they still lose, well, at least the Lightning could, hang their hat on that for the rest of the summer and kind of take that into next season and use that as motivation for next year. So let me know in the comments below. I mean, what are your predictions for this game? I'm going to have to say a 4-2 Panthers win. Like I said, nothing wrong with that. It's just a disappointing series that we've had thus far. And if the Lightning do win this game, which is great, I still think you have a huge, really a Mount Everest-sized mountain to climb to win this series and to pull off an incredible upset. So let me know your predictions. Let me know your thoughts. And we're going to be talking about a lot of probably delicate things in this episode today. Coming up, we'll talk about the roster dilemma that awaits Tampa Bay in the offseason. What does that mean? Stick around and find out. But first, we're going to talk about today's first sponsor, and that is our friends over at Indeed.com. Now, when you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed is the hiring platform where you could attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you could do it all with Indeed. Hate waiting. Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume in Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Like I said, I had a friend who started his own business about 6 months ago. It absolutely took off from the get-go, and he needed to hire people fast. And not only hire people, but quality people to fit the needs of his business. With Indeed, he was able to hire 3 people in the first week of being Indeed. And since then, his business has exponentially grown. Now he needs to hire more and more people. And he did it all with Indeed. Now, so go ahead to Indeed right now, because Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on Amazon Music. We're on Apple, Spotify. Go ahead and download the podcast there. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. So this is a conversation that I think we've had for the most part all year to a certain extent. We definitely had it early on, but now that the playoff series has really highlighted the deficiencies with this roster, it's something that I think maybe some or a lot of Lightning fans, depending on what side of the aisle you prefer to be on, some of you might be looking forward to it, some of you may not. But there's it's going to be a very important offseason for this Lightning team. And the Lightning have an issue that they're going to have to figure out relatively quickly. We've talked about it on the last episode, and the episode before, Steven Stamkos has been playing phenomenally throughout the course of this series. Has been the only spark plug on this team, whereas really for the most part, the offense has kind of fallen dead. But he has been the one constant on this team throughout the course of the series. And as we all know, after this series, this offseason, he'll become an unrestricted free agent. And I was originally in the beginning of the season, I was in the camp of let's try and find a deal where we could trade him away. So, if that's the case, if the Lightning can't reach a deal, at least you can get something in return for it, except for, and without, having him walk and then, you really get nothing there. But I've had a change of heart because Stamkos, I think we could all agree this season has really turned it around. He has really started to expand his game, which is really something you don't see from someone this late in their career. He's done a very good job of just kind of opening up his game. This could be also a Cooper thing too, as well. Not having the offense entirely revolve around him, and I think that's been an important thing, not only for Stamkos but as well as the rest of the team, at least throughout the course of the regular season. His one-timer this series has been really important to getting things started. Now, after that, really not much has been able to get going for this Lightning team. But I think that it is very important that this team figures out a deal with him, especially now that, there's really not any other choice out there. The problem with that, though, and I tweeted this out yesterday, I said that I thought it was very important, and I'm paraphrasing the tweet, I don't have it in front of me, but essentially what I said was that it is very important that the Lightning, once the regular season is over, sit down and figure out a deal with him. But at the same time, they have to show some restraint, something that I don't think that they have shown when dealing out long-term contracts to their players in recent years. I think that really they can't just put pen to paper on the first deal that Stamkos says that he wants. And I'm not blaming Stamkos, obviously. If he wants to go somewhere else, feels like he has a better chance to win as well as play for more in terms of AAV. That's more power to him. He has every right to do that, especially at his point in his career. The clock is ticking. But what I will say is that I don't think he wants to leave Tampa. This has been really he grew up here, essentially. This has been his home since he was drafted at 18. But I think that really at the end of the day, it's going to have to be a business decision, unfortunately. And quite frankly, I don't have a whole ton of faith in Julien Brisebois to be able to get that done in a way to where it's mutually beneficial for both parties, unless Stamkos takes a substantial less amount of money, which I don't see that happening either. Because let's face it, the big issue with this Lightning team that they have really yet to address over the last couple of years and have really tried to put Band-Aids over, and it really hasn't worked. And you could see it in this season as well as this playoff run, has been the defensive side of things. The pairings, they've just been terrible. Hedman hasn't been good this year. Chernak has just been very disappointing since McDonough's departure. Sergachev has been another one just really disappointing. And obviously he's been hurt. So, not having him in the lineup over the last really week, especially in the playoffs, has been an issue for this Lightning team. And then really from there, if you go from Hedman and Sergachev and Chernak, it's a really big drop-off. Radish, I still have high hopes for. I really liked how he played this season. He hasn't really made a big difference in this series, though. Other than that, that's really where the issue lies for this Lightning team, and that's something that we haven't, or maybe we have. It's just been so long since we've really talked about it. But I think that's the one thing that the Lightning fan base has really taken for granted over the last couple of years, especially the Cup run years, where really, every year the main focus was depth scoring. Obviously we all know by now that depth scoring is really the thing that helps you in the playoffs, and we've experienced it. We're experiencing the other side of it now in this series with Florida and how good their fourth line has been. But it's one of those things where the Lightning are going to have to make a very tough decision, because that might very well be what it comes down to, is signing Steven Stamkos to a long-term deal, keeping him in Tampa Bay, or going out and finding a premier defenseman, or possibly they could do both. I don't know how that's going to work with the trade just yet. We're still in the playoffs now. As of the time of this recording, the Lightning are still in the playoffs. But the one name that comes to mind that I've always liked, that I hear that they're looking to try and deal away, is Jacob Chikrin from Ottawa. But that's a whole nother conversation to have. I've seen some people in the comment section on our YouTube channel talk about how really, trade Hedman or Chernak, or, make this trade, make that trade. It's easier said than done. I don't know what value at this point in time Chernak really has to where you're going to get really something substantial in return for him. Hedman, I feel the same way. He's still looked at by some as a premier defenseman. I don't really look at him like that. Maybe if he had a 20-goal season or something close to that, yeah, we could have that conversation and say that. But he hasn't really impressed me, and at times this year he has really shown his age. So it's going to be a tough decision. We might have to have another offseason where the Lightning do away with certain players that unfortunately we've come to really like, and that's going to be the reality of the situation. So let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, I think that really unfortunately for the Lightning, Stamkos playing well this series has driven up his value, and that contract demand has gone up maybe a couple of million, one or two, not 6 or 5 or whatever. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. What would you rather do? Would you rather bring back Stamkos or use that money towards a defenseman in the offseason? Let me know in the comments below, or you could reach out to us on our Twitter accounts, LO_Lightning on Twitter, LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram, or you could give me a follow on Twitter at DankyDank, DENKYD8NK. And coming up, we're going to talk about the reality of the situation, which we basically have been talking about this entire time without really saying it out loud. Well, guess what? We're going to say the quiet part out loud right now. So coming up in just a little bit, stick around for that. But first, we're going to talk about our last sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends with Monopoly Go. Now, I've been told I'm a competitive person. Okay, well, yeah, I have a competitive side. We all do, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I could charge them rent on iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly game. But now I also can heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You could team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get on the game and join friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So one last possible time for the season. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel there. Hit that notification button. So as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. So we're in the end game now. It's one of those things where I said it before. I don't think the Lightning are going to win tonight. I just think that they've dug themselves too deep of a hole. And it's just, that's really been the story all season long for this Lightning team. And there's really not much else to say about it, to be honest. This is something that has been a buildup for the last couple of years. I said it at the time a couple of years ago when Julien Brisebois was dealing out long-term contracts while we were slowly watching other players leave, that this is something that was going to come back and bite us, whether it be in a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years, who's to really say? And it's currently biting the Lightning right now. And it's one of those things where it makes me nervous for the offseason. Because we could sit here, and we could sit here and talk about all the good trades that he has made, the right moves, especially even this year at the deadline. Great, phenomenal moves. I mean, there's no doubt at this time that Julien Brisebois is good at finding those guys that he needs to kind of put the Band-Aid on. I think that's a good way of putting it, because we just got done talking about, should we bring Stamkos back? Should we not? There's been talk from some people in the fan base that they want to trade Hedman or Chernak or whatever the case may be. My thing is, though, what about Duclair? I'm not saying trade him, obviously. He's a UFA after this year, but he's going to be part of the next generation of Lightning players. And I look at it that way, because you could have, you know, as much as I would love to keep Stamkos for the rest of his career in Tampa, when you look at it, in the long term, yeah, in the short term, it's great. You know, you're keeping the face of the franchise, essentially. But would you rather have Stamkos and kind of have this season or this kind of season over the next 4 or 5 years, or let him walk? Because I don't think that Stamkos is going to really settle for less. It's going to have to be a significant amount of money that he's going to need to not take in order for this team to kind of stay the way it is, get a defenseman, and agree to a deal that Duclair will agree to stay. And when I say get a defenseman, I mean get someone of high quality, not another third line pairing guy. No, absolutely not. They need someone who can play on the second. They need a guy who is multi-dimensional, especially on the first. So really, essentially, you need 2 defensemen. And then you could put Radish on the third and then call it a day. But really, that's been the issue for this Lightning team over the last couple of years, is that Julien Brisebois has really failed to get a defenseman that can consistently play well on both sides of the ice. We don't have that. Even Victor Hedman, you don't have that now. You see spurts of it, but that's pretty much it at this point in time. The guy, like I said, he has had his moments over the last couple of years, but you could start to see the miles that he's put on really come to the surface. And I mean, he's still in his early 30s, but the guy looks like he's 35, 40 even. He's no spring chicken. But really, that's going to be the important thing this offseason. And I think that really we need to address and really say it out loud, is that this Lightning team is not good. It's all smoke and mirrors. I mean, you could see it. They're built, and I saw a couple of fans talk about this in the comment section of our last video, and it's absolutely true. The Lightning, they're built to make the playoffs, but they're not built to play and win in the playoffs. And that's a very, very important thing to acknowledge. And I wonder if Julien Brisebois is finally acknowledging that. You could see it in this series. You have a team, even then, last couple of weeks, they've really sleptwalked into the postseason. Ever since they clinched the playoffs, they've been a shadow of what they once were. And that's something that's really concerning. And really, as much as I want the Lightning to come into today's game, win, maybe string a couple of games together, then once you're down 3-2, you start to gain some momentum. That's great. But at the same time, where is that really going to get the Lightning? Because all you're doing is preventing the inevitable. And that's pretty much it. I always try to be positive here, obviously, about this Lightning team. But when they give you nothing to be positive, or they barely give you anything to be positive about on the ice, then you got to say what it is. So let me know in the comments below. A lot of tough decisions await the Lightning. And like I said, for today's game, I just hope that we see a good performance. That's all I'm really asking of them is just a good performance. I just want to see them play well and go out with their heads held high. So let me know in the comments below, thoughts, feelings, concerns, questions. We weren't able to get to some fan mail. We'll keep that for Monday, so you still have some time to submit your questions, whether it be in the comments section or on our Twitter pages, or if you want to just tweet it straight to me, go ahead. So we'll be back on Monday. We'll talk about the chips wherever they may lay or may fall at this point in time, and we'll take it from there. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.